Good morning, everyone. Excited to have you on for our next episode where we cover motivation, we cover mindset, effectiveness, creating an E.F.S, an environment facilitating failure, and an E.F.S, environment facilitating success. So excited to have you guys with me. I'm your host, Taylor Reed, and you're listening to the Reed Podcast. Welcome to the show, you guys. Super excited to dive right into this. Probably the most common question that I get is how do I stay motivated? And I think that's kind of a two, three, four, 5 part issue. It's not singular. Everyone wants a magic answer to motivation, and I don't think that really exists. Everyone wants the secret formula, secret pill, secret keys that people do to win at what they're doing. And I'm not about that. I don't think that's true. I think that hard work, dedication, consistency is the key to pretty much everything it is that you do. Coupled, of course, with knowledge, which we'll talk about. Everything that I'm going to talk about in relation to motivation is it's kind of my anti-formula, so to speak. So my formula for success is this: you need to have the ambition and the motivation to go after what it is that you want. You have to also have the knowledge to be effective and to go in the right direction. And then you have to have the goal. What is it that I'm working towards? Because both the knowledge and the motivation are good, but eventually you're going to get to a point where you're in the grind and it sucks. And you have to have that end goal in sight to remind you of why it is you're doing what it is that you're doing. And you do that long enough, and that's how you become successful. And it might take whatever it is you're trying to do, 4 years, 40 years, and that's just how you're successful and how you get to the top at something. So we're going to dive into that because motivation, again, I believe is a multi-dimensional issue, and we're going to break it up into some stages. So that first stage is the motivation. People ask, how do I get motivated to go to the gym? It's really common. People say, I want to get in there, but I lack the motivation to get in. Normally, they don't actually lack the motivation to get in. Normally, they're insecure and they're worried about going into the gym. And I'd like to talk about that first because I think a lot of people mix it up with, oh, I'm not motivated. No, you're just scared about what other people will think. You're fearful of judgment, and that stops more people from pursuing their dreams than I think anything else. That's the number one dream killer. So you have to understand that in the fitness community, we are all cheering you on. We all want to see you win. I don't see a single person in the gym and think ill of that person, even if I don't personally like them. We're all in there trying to do the same exact thing, which is get better, become a better version of ourselves. And that's honorable, that's admirable, and I applaud anyone that pursues that. That's a good thing. So you have to understand that first off, you're stepping into one of the few places where everyone's on the same page. We are all in there to get better. If you're a CrossFitter and you're crushing like an EMOM or something, EMOM workouts are some of the most brutal works I've done. Great. More power too. If you're a power lifter and you pull 700 pounds on the floor, friggin' awesome. Like that's great. I mean, uh, yeah, I might not want to do the same thing, but it doesn't mean that I can't still respect you and push you and support you in what it is that you're doing. If you're a bodybuilder and you just want to get big, awesome. Like that's great. Go to the gym and put your work in. Get it. So you have to understand that we're all pretty much on the same page when we go into the gym. The only time there's issues is when someone's insecure. And another thing that I like to talk about here is this fear of judgment. What are other people going to think? Maybe I am an exception, which is totally possible, but I just don't care because I'm not in there to look at you. I don't care what you're wearing. I don't care what your workout looks like. I'm not watching you. I'm 100% focused on my own workout and what it is that I'm doing. And you're secondary when I come into the gym. So this idea that, oh, everyone's looking at me, most people are in there to work out and they don't really care. So that helps alleviate some of the stress, I think, when you understand that, look, you're putting all this pressure on yourself and judgment when it's really just not there. That's just you projecting these things that are not accurate. So it's very important to understand is that most people are very self-absorbed in what they're doing and in their workout. They're trying to get into a zone. Yes, people do come into the gym to socialize, which I think it can be a good place to do that. Um, to network and things like that. That can be a great thing, but you got to make sure you do it, of course, um, in conjunction with a little bit of perspective. If someone has a hoodie on and their headphones in, they don't want to talk to you. And sometimes they're trying to get in and out with a workout, which I totally get. So just a little bit of perspective there, I think, is important. Next thing is when you're trying to become motivated, start small. Your motivation, your mental motivation, is a muscle, just like anything else. So if you try to go too big, too quick, you can really overwhelm yourself. Start small. If you haven't worked out in years, take a walk. Like, take a walk every day for a week. Jog half a mile. Hop on an elliptical or a bike, something that's not going to put a lot of stress on your joints, that you can relax to, kind of get into a zone. You have to build your base starting from the very bottom. So start small. Now, you're not going to stay small. You're going to start small. You start small and then work up, because the body is an incredible, incredible machine that can do phenomenal things, most of which I don't think we've even fully tapped into. And you don't want to cap yourself by, oh, well, this workout said I can only do so many reps or so many sets. As far as I'm concerned, I want all the sets, all the reps, all of that workout, and then plus some. And that's a mentality shift that takes a while to build, but you have to start small, be consistent, and start it today. You will always have an excuse. Excuses run for miles and miles and miles, and you will always have another one. You need to stop with the excuses. If you're trying to get motivated and get into the gym, one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give to you is stop with the excuses. You don't need them. Go work out and do it today. I don't care if you have a dentist appointment. I don't care if you have to make dinner. I don't care what your list of priorities is. If you want something bad enough, you will make it a priority. So if that means that you have to go jog or walk at midnight or 3 a.m., go do it. Because you will always be able to put something in front of I can't because of. We have a rule in the gym when I'm training people about the C word. You are not allowed to say the word can't. If you do, it's 100 push-ups. I even gave my own mother 100 push-ups, and she didn't like me, but I was trying to explain to her, look, the issue is that I'm not going to allow you to be a victim. Not that she is. That's not particular to her or anything. That's just in general. People take this victim mindset of I can't do this or I can't do that. No, you can, and I don't want to hear the word I can't, because it's bad mental imagery. It's bad mental wording. Don't make excuses. Go out and do, because you can do incredible things. Even if we're starting small with it, make it a priority and go do it. You have to be willing to execute immediately. Now, the next thing that is a limiter for a lot of people when they're trying to become motivated is they have all these things in the way that help make them excuses. One of the first things is toxic people. So I break up people into 3 categories based off a conversation I had with someone, Andrew Trento, who's a great martial arts instructor from New Jersey. I was at U.S. Nationals in Fort Lauderdale, Florida for Taekwondo, which I competed in for something like 17, 18 years. And we were both refereeing at U.S. Nationals. I was a U.S. Certified referee through the Amateur Athletic Union. And we were talking because he's really big into Haganah, which is kind of like Krav Maga, except for under the person that he learns, they do like pistol and rifle shooting. They incorporate a lot of things under Mike Lee Kinerick. And just to give you a little bit of context for the conversation, one thing they talked about that was taught by Mike in the Israeli military is how they break up people for command that you're leading. And I kind of branched off that and separated people, as far as talking about environment, into really 3 kinds of people. And the biggest one that you want to avoid is toxic people. Now, not to break people up into classes, but this is the majority of people. I don't want to put a percentage on it because I think it depends person to person. But toxic people are insecure. They're intimidated by your success. They're intimidated by any drive or steps you take to better yourself. Or if they don't at the beginning, they will later on if you're consistent with it. Toxic people try to bring you into their drama. Toxic people suck your energy and your motivation from you. Toxic people hold you back from becoming the person that you're meant to be, which is an amazing, phenomenal, intrepid individual. And toxic people also don't challenge you to get better. And that's very important because the next group of people, maintainers, have a little bit of toxic and a little bit of challenge in them. I break people up into the three categories: toxic people, maintainers, and then challengers. Maintainers are uh, another large group of people, and they have elements of both, but they're just trying to get by. They're just trying to make ends meet. They just want to work just hard enough to make it, to have the house, to be able to drink a beer, and to be able to relax. They don't have ambition. They're intimidated by ambition, and they might be able to applaud it in the short term, but don't actually apply it in themselves. They're also going to surround themselves with some drama. But the majority of people I break up into maintainers and toxic people. Now, the challengers, which to varying degrees, depending on their mindset, are the kinds of people that you want in your life because they challenge you to get better at whatever it is you're doing. They push you. If you want to know if you have a challenger in your life, you can ask yourself a couple of quick questions. Has that person pushed you? Have they expected things of you? Do they expect success? Do they ask you where you plan on being in the next 5 years? Do they ask you what your goals are? These are the kinds of things that challengers do because they're goal-oriented, ambitious, motivated individuals. Now, one of my big principles that I use, and I can't remember off the top of my head the author of this, this is not from me, this is just a principle that I borrowed, is that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And you have to be very careful with that because the majority of you think you have good people in your life, but you don't. And that's why you're not going anywhere, and that's why you have a hard time getting into the gym. You don't have people that are inspiring you and motivating you and pushing you to get into the gym. Your support system, your environment is huge. Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with? You might have to get rid of someone. You might have to get rid of a couple people. You probably should get rid of a couple people. I ask myself that all the time. Now, here's the thing. If they're all toxic people, it is better to have no friends than bad friends. Always. Because bad friends drag you down with bad influence. If you're sitting around with drug addicts now, in 10 years, I don't see you as a doctor. The likelihood of you being a doctor is very, very low. There's a pie chart somewhere that proves that. Okay, so queso is delicious. You really need to check the people that are in your life. If you have challengers, that is good. Now, it's not to say you can't have people in the other setup, because what I like to also run through is a rule of thirds. 33% people that I have in my life are mentors, 33% are peers, 33% are the people I'm mentoring. Most people have like a 95-5, 90% peers, 5% mentoring, 5 if any, and 5% mentors. And usually the mentor is there not because they want them there, but because they're forced to be there in a teaching position or as a boss. So your environment is very, very critical in determining your ability to succeed, your window of success opportunity. There's some very key things there. But on the motivation side of things, if you want to be motivated, you want to bombard yourself with motivation. If you are bombarded daily by people that are in your life that are motivating you and pushing you to be better, that's what's going to happen. So that's very, very important. I love to surround myself with motivation. It helps me. I listen to podcasts, things that motivate me. Eric Thomas, phenomenal speaker. Really, really like him. Has great content. Gary Vee. There's Order of Man, I believe is. I'll have to double check that. Really good podcast. There's some great ones, you guys, that are just high energy individuals that challenge you. They're challengers. And that's one thing I love about ET is he's constantly challenging me with the content he puts out on social media. I don't know him personally. I don't need to. I can see through what it is that he's trying to tell me through his social, that he's challenging what it is that I am and where it is that I'm going, and I appreciate that. That's important. You need to have that in your life. So bombard yourself with motivation. You cannot get up without being motivated. If that means you have to write something on your hand, on your mirror, on your door, on your refrigerator, you need to be bombarded with it so there are no excuses. There is no opportunity to not be motivated. So your environment is very important. One thing that can help is changing your social media. That can be huge. I have thousands of friends across Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all these social media platforms. I really only follow about 100 to 200 of them because only about 100 to 200 of them are challengers that put out positive, uplifting, motivating information and content onto their social. So if you want to Be surrounded by more challengers. Check your own social media. What are you putting out? Is it positivity? Is it motivation? Is it challenging? Because if it's drama, you better believe that those challengers don't want you in their life. Or if they do, they're willing to reach down and mentor you. You need to be the kind of person that can interact with those other people. Always check yourself first. Then start to alter your social media on who you follow. Cut out the bad, just like friends, bring in the good. I can't open up my social media without being bombarded by motivation from multiple sites that are pumping out interviews, that are pumping out motivational quotes, that just things that inspire me. I can't help but be inspired every time I look at my phone because I have changed the content of my social media, which is critical. Very, very critical. You want to incorporate good habits, get rid of the bad habits. If you're smoking, if you're drinking all the time, these are not healthy habits to help you get into the gym, and they're going to stymie your success. You want good habits that are solid. Your music. If you're listening to NF, you can't help but be inspired. If you're listening to country songs about drinking beer and just trying to make it so you can have the truck, the house, and the wife, don't expect to be inspired. This is one of the reasons why I'm so critical of country music or of Christian worship music or Christian music in general. The lyrical content is not inspiring. It brings you down as an individual that's just trying to make it or needs God or some other person to help uplift you because you're pathetic. You are not pathetic. You're an amazing, incredible individual. And if you knew what you were capable of, you would be scared of yourself and how far you could go. But when you're surrounded by people that tell you, or music that tells you, that you are not all that you are and can become, that's going to bring you down. You guys, these are things I want you to start on today. Execute, execute, execute. That was chapter 1 of my book, Bold Beyond Belief, because I think that is the most applicable to anything that is that you do. You can read all the self-help books, listen to all the podcasts, interview all the gurus, but if you're not willing to execute today, you're failing, and not in a good way. Not failing as in learning, as in failing as not going anywhere, as in sliding backwards. You need to execute. Do these things, pause the podcast, do these things right now. Right? If this is motivating to you, subscribe to the podcast. If I'm not motivating and Eric Thomas is motivating, subscribe to that podcast. You need to change your environment now, as in today. You have to execute. All right, so that's going to move us into stage 2, which is knowledge. Remember our success formula. We have motivation slash ambition plus knowledge plus the goal equals success. The reason why this is important is because, yes, you could run around the earth in the opposite direction to get to the same point that it could have taken you 10 feet to go to, but it takes you thousands of times longer. Knowledge increases your effectiveness and will compound your motivation. If you're seeing good results from the gym because you're educated or you hired a trainer, someone that knows what they're doing, you're going to be more motivated because you're going to see the results quicker. Now, yes, hard work, consistency, dedication over long term with patience is key, but it is much easier to get to your goal with a little bit of information and a ton of hard work than it is with no knowledge. Knowledge is a key component. You need to seek out mentors. How do you find a good mentor? What does their life look like? Do they have the kind of life that you aspire to have? And this is hard because you need to look through the materialistic BS. You need to look through their fake relationships. What in that person are they happy? Like really happy. I'm not talking about did they appear to be happy. Are they when you talk with them, can you not help but be inspired by their peace and their happiness? That's the kind of mentor you want. Research. With the internet, there's no reason not to be educated in anything it is that you want. I started this podcast 100% based on someone I reached out to at a radio station and what I learned online. I'm 22 years old. I didn't need to go hire someone. It was all free to me. I read up on it, and I was able to start a podcast purely on research, seeking out mentors, and reading. That compounded my motivation to try to start this podcast and to reach, help, and impact more people because of that. So that's just a little micro example of how the effectiveness of what I knew compounded my motivation to start this. And the same will happen with you in fitness. The more information you have, the more effective you will be, and the more you will want to implement and to be motivated and to be ambitious. There's a husband and a wife that I trained not that long ago. Really nice people. They did some photos for my wedding. Really, really cool people. I trained one of their kids in boxing. And one thing they talked about is they had tried really hard beforehand to hit the gym, but didn't know what they were doing and didn't see any results. And they trained with me for, I think, 2 months. Both of them dropped a couple percentage points of fat content in their body and flipped that with muscle, which was awesome in a 2 month period of time. Putting on 2 to 3 pounds of lean muscle mass in 2 months is very impressive, especially when you're starting. That's a lot of muscle mass. I was very impressed. They were coming 2, 3 times a week, very consistent, worked out hard, and they were excited because the effectiveness of what they were doing compounded that motivation that they had to get into the gym. And that was awesome to see, and the same will be of you. So pairing motivation with other things can compound your motivation. Now, stage 3 is going to be your goals, your goal orientation. If you are to be successful, you need to have a clear, tangible goal. Uh, when you go to be a certified trainer, one of the biggest things that's discussed is SMART goals. So that is a measurable goal that has a time frame, that has a way to get there, and a how to get there. Saying I want to lose 10 pounds is not a goal. Saying I want to lose 10 pounds, 2 pounds per week over the course of a couple of months and then hold it through proper diet and exercise is a clear, concise goal. You need to have and know exactly where you're going, have the vision of where you're going, write it down, say it, talk to people about it, have people hold you accountable, and then go after it. Goal orientation is a key piece of success. You can't have just this fantastic idea of what you want to do and say it and not follow up. You have to be willing to execute every day towards that goal. I can't count how many people in high school told me they were going to double or triple major in this or that. A lot of them couldn't actually hack college, or if they did, they were not employable because what they were doing didn't actually mean they had a marketable skill set, and are left in this quandary, and they're in 21, 22, 23, 24, and they don't know what to do with their lives because they had an idea of what they wanted to do, which is go to college, but they didn't actually have a long-term goal of what they wanted to do with their life. Now, this may change over time. For a long time, I wanted to be a world champion in Taekwondo, and I really lost my love for that sport, and my love of boxing emerged, and I just wish I would have started boxing sooner. That's where my heart is at. So things can change over time, but the important thing is that when you have a goal, you make steps to attack it every single day and execute. You have short, mid, and long-term goals. I just filled out a questionnaire for 406 Nutrition. It's a local supplement company, and they asked, one of the questions was that they had was what are your goals? And I said, well, my short-term goal to prepare for, which is within 6 months to a year, is to compete at Washington and Montana State Golden Gloves as an amateur, an open fighter at 178 pounds. That's my weight class. I'm a light heavyweight. I want to go compete, not necessarily win, but I want to compete and give my best showing because I'm less worried about winning and more of giving everything I have in that moment. So that's my short-term goal. My medium-term goal is to continue to build the boxing team, which has been phenomenal. It's an amazing crew. I'm so excited for that. I train people at Beast Athletes in Kalispell to box, and it's been an absolutely amazing experience. Youth and adults, 6 years old on up, for both recreational athletes and competition, even though we all train to compete. And then my long-term goal is to impact 1 million people through health and fitness positively to change their lives. And that seems like a lot, but and it is unrealistic now, but I always will take an unrealistic goal and work at it because my true potential, I believe, is not where I am now and will be unlocked in the future. And when I make unrealistic goals, I start to work them, and then after a couple years, they start to become realistic. And after a little while, they're within my grasp. And that's what comes from ambition, hard work, consistency, and dedication. So my long-term goals are always completely and totally absurd because I believe you have to have absurd goals in order to push yourself. So those are three things that I want to run by you guys, those stages that's going to help you be motivated. And then I want to wrap all of that up, those three stages, the becoming motivated, changing your environment, stage 2, the knowledge piece, and stage 3, the goals as the formula to success. I want to wrap that up with this. And I talk about this in my book, one of the best experiences I ever had. I went to a girlfriend's house. My parents didn't really approve of her. I was just kind of young and dumb at the time, and I had been invited over, and I'm not big on social gatherings. I don't like it. They're kind of awkward for me, and never really know what to say. And I've gotten a lot better at my communication skills and things over the years. but it was really a little awkward. We had dinner and started getting to know them, and they loosened up a little bit. And it was an elderly couple. I want to say, early 50s, mid 50s, and um, not that that's super old by any means. It's just in comparison with myself at 22, that's a lot older for me. And they were honestly pretty miserable and full of regret, and I felt that as soon as I got there. And for me, I think that, well, you have so much experience and so much opportunity that there's so many things you can do, and you have so much time left. You're only 50. Like, you might have 20 years left of work in you. And I just had a really hard time listening. And the husband at one point started crying. He'd been laid off from Home Depot because he had hurt his back lifting something, and he was waiting for workers' comp to come. That bills piling up, and his wife had to go back to work at Walmart. And it left a very lasting impact on me because I didn't want to be that person. I want desperately to be successful, not because I want money. I'm not motivated by money. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30, multi-millionaire. Not because I actually want the money. I'll leave it to the family in a will. I don't really care about it. I don't need money to be happy. What I care about is the process and the grind. I want to push myself to my full capability. And if that means that I become a millionaire in the process, awesome. I chase the grind and the process because I love it and I love being in it and I love pushing myself. The money is just going to be a representation, a manifestation of that drive. So it has nothing to do with that. What bothered me was the regret. So one thing that I remember, or at least I try to remember every single day, is that I'm going to die. We are all going to die at some point. And a lot of people have a hard time talking about that because the three things that we talk about the least are money, sex, and death. Death to me is one of the biggest motivators. I wake up every day thinking about my age, where I'm at, and where I'm going to be. My athletic career is very limited to a small window of opportunity. I cannot compete as a world champion athlete at 50 years old in my sport. It's not going to happen. Just pure science. Not to give a cap on what the body can do, because I'm very much against that, but it's not realistic for me. So, which means I use it more than anything as a motivator to train as hard as I can, push myself as hard as I can. So at 22, that's why I have my own business. I run my own podcast. I published a book. I have a boxing team. I don't do these things because I need them to feel respect from others. I don't really care what anybody else thinks. I'm going to do what I want because I'm passionate about it, but because I know that I'm going to die at any time. And that if I ended my life today, or my life ended for some reason, I would be 100% confident, resting, knowing that I did everything I could in the moments that I had to build the best relationships possible and to push myself to my full capacity. Now, I know this is not the best version of me, because at 14, that wasn't the best version of me. At 17, that wasn't the best version of me. And at 22 now, in 3 years, you shouldn't recognize me because I'm going to be such a different person from how I push myself. To me, that is motivation. Knowing you're going to die and getting in there and working at it because time is limited, time is short. You need to have a sense of urgency about you. That, to me, is one of the greatest motivators of all time. As far as I'm concerned, the graveyard is the richest place on earth. More dreams and ideas and business plans and cures for all sorts of diseases. Anything you can think of, the graveyard has it. It's there. But fear stops so many people that pushed it off and pushed it off, didn't execute, had an excuse, and now they're dead. And their ideas and everything, the satisfaction, fulfillment, and the happiness that could have come out of seeing those things to fruition will never be seen because they didn't execute. And I want desperately not to be that person. I don't want to be that person regretting my decisions, my wife being forced to go work to pay my medical bills because I can't make it and I squandered the time that I had. Time is our most valuable asset. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You don't know how much of it you have. All you can do is spend it. We all have the same 24 hours a day, and whoever grinds more will get more out of their time. If you want to waste your time watching Game of Thrones and the latest NBA game, that's fine. Like, I understand that you need to have a break, mental break sometimes, but understand the cost behind it. When you have a sense of urgency, all those other things become a lot less important. Family becomes more important. Pushing yourself becomes more important. So understand, with all of those three things, you need to have a sense of urgency about you. Be patient in the long term because it may take 4, 5, 6, 7 years, 40 years, decades to accomplish what it is that you want, depending on the scale of your goal. but you should be urgently, passionately working towards those goals every single day to accomplish what it is that you want. The podcast today, I really appreciate you having guys on and listening. Super excited. I'm going to be posting a lot more content on the podcast. I'm really excited to bring in some other people in the fitness community and mentors that I respect to have them on. Super, super excited for that. Real quick, I'm going to post these links in the description, but if you guys want to hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, my Instagram is Montana Taekwondo Fighter. I know it's a long one. Email is Montana Taekwondo Fighter at gmail.com. You can find me on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube as Taylor Reed. I'm going to try to get our video podcast up and running as soon as possible on the other visual platforms, because I know you guys really like some of those if you're not super big on just purely the audio. And also have a link to my book in the description, Bold Beyond Belief. I highly recommend you read it. I'm really excited to get the input from it just because it's helped so many people so far in the boxing team and at the Beast Athletes gym where I train people at. And that was why I wrote it. I want to be able to give the lessons that I've learned through trial and error back to people to be able to help them and do what I did in a shorter period of time to accomplish even greater things than what I'm doing, which I want and desperately hope for, because that fills me with so much satisfaction, so much happiness, so much fulfillment. I can't really quite put it to words how wonderful that is when I can help someone in that capacity and they come back and tell me that it inspired them. That is 100% what I'm about. So I'll leave that link in the description for you guys, along with some other links. And super excited, you guys, to see you next time for the podcast. If you have any questions or anything that didn't make sense, please leave it in the comments or feel free to email me at, again, Montana Taekwondo Fighter at Gmail. And I will see you guys next time. I'm your host, and you're listening to the Reed Podcast.